Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Thank you so much for joining me for this live stream. I'm really excited to share with you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Just while I'm waiting for all of this to load, I just want to start off by sharing with you that we're going to be talking about a lot of different things today. And I want everyone to try to remember that this is about options, not obligations. So the last thing I want anyone to feel is, a level of stress or overwhelm by, feeling like they have to do all of the ideas and suggestions that I'm going to be offering today. Because I think we can sometimes feel this pressure, especially as high functioning people, that we're supposed to be doing all of this, big productive stuff during quarantine. And that's normal for high functioning people to feel that way. But as a psychologist, what I want people to know is that even if you find yourself sometimes just kind of watching the proverbial paint dry and you're thinking, why am I not doing more? I'm just sitting here at home. I want you to know that in the back of your mind, you're actually processing a lot more than you probably realize. Obviously, quarantine has stirred up a lot of thoughts for us about health and survival and control and just all of these things. And so if you find yourself sometimes just wanting to sit on the couch and chill a little bit, try to be gentle with yourself around that. I've had so many clients tell me that they feel, like they must be lazy or whatever, just because they're kind of feeling a little bit stuck on their couch sometimes. And while it is good sometimes to nudge yourself to take the first step in action, I, again, just want to remind you that sometimes just sitting in stillness, just sitting quietly, is actually doing more than you think in terms of giving your mind some space to process all of this stuff. So I just, want to thank everyone again for coming, recognizing that in this large public live stream, we've got all kinds of different people coming. So we've got families, we've got singles, we've got parents, we've got, professionals, couples, everybody. So we're going to have some tips for everybody. And you will see there at the bottom that we've got some resources. So there's drchloe.com/COVID, where there's some links to some products and articles and things that I like. And of course, there's also drchloe.com/book, because I do have an upcoming book on, the subject of nervous energy and my work with high functioning people. So if that's something you're interested in, you can find out more. I just want to say, of course, also that today's presentation is not therapy. It's just a public information that I'm sharing about some things that I have found have been helpful to people I've been working with. But obviously, if you need, individual one-to-one therapy, I encourage you to get it. And on drchloe.com/COVID, there are some links, even to some articles I've written about choosing a good therapist and all of that kind of stuff. But today is really just more about self-help, about some tips that we can think about for ourselves, that we can do just right from home. Whenever we're looking at stressors in life, it's really important to know that what the stressors we encounter in life are actually much less important than how we navigate those stressors. This is why, for example, you'll have people that are living in extreme poverty or with terminal illnesses, yet they're able to be balanced and happy and find joy. Whereas you'll sometimes then have other people that have a wealth of resources and all kinds of support, and yet they struggle to find happiness, right? And so there's a lot of factors that could play into that. But one of the big ones is how we manage our stress. And when it comes to managing stress, one of the most important things that's true, whether you are, in the grandpa space or the parent space or the single space, anywhere in between, the managing to focus on the things that you can control is generally one of the healthiest ways that we can navigate stressors, almost no matter what they are. And the things that are within our zone of control when it comes to quarantine here that I want to highlight are the way that we structure our environment, the way that we manage our daily routines, the way that we practice self-care, and the boundaries that we have with other people, because boundaries are getting a little bit blurred, certainly during this time. Now, one of the things that, when people were writing in with their questions and things that they were hoping I would talk about during this presentation, this workshop, is structure and routine. How do we find structure and routine? And I'm always interested in ways that we can actually have technology support us. And these are going to be helpful tips, I hope, for you during quarantine, but also potentially even after. So, please take comfort in knowing that whatever efforts you decide to make, whatever things you decide to try from this workshop, it's not just wasted effort that's just going to go away after quarantine. You're doing things for yourself that are going to help you even after quarantine is over. So with that said, when it comes to structure and routine, I would encourage you to think about ways that your environment can support you automatically. So, for example, if you have your smart home device, like mine is Alexa, I don't want to even say the name right now because she'll wake up. But you can program your smart home device to, for example, put on light classical music for you at 8 a.m. every morning. And then maybe have her programmed to put on some nature sounds for you, say at 8 p.m. every evening. And that takes away some of the admin burden for you of having to create an environment for yourself. And the nice thing about getting your environment to shift automatically for you, especially in quarantine, is because we're not as in touch with some of the rhythms of our everyday lives, right? So usually we wake up in the morning, have a shower, go to the office, whatever, and our environment is changing around us just because we're mobile and we're moving. So when we're grounded in one place, we need to think about how we can get that environment to change for us, right? Another thing when it comes to structure and routine is the value of a shower. I've actually been really surprised at some of the number of high functioning people I've been working with that have said, like, yeah, I'm not really showering as much because I'm, in quarantine, I'm not around people. And then they're wondering why they're, starting to feel kind of low energy and down in the, kind of a depressive space. And there's something called behavioral activation in psychology, which is around the idea that if we start to take on the behaviors of a person, for example, who's depressed, we could actually start to become a little bit depressed. And one of the markers of a person with significant depression is actually that they let their hygiene go. So I encourage you to make sure that you start your day off with a shower. It's a really great way to get yourself moving, taking good care of yourself, certainly also in the evenings or just other ways to kind of mark an anchor point in your day that the day has started, or to mark the end of the day. Showers are great, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Also, you'll notice I've got some books with some headphones on them. That's because I really encourage people to, think about listening to audiobooks and things like that as they're starting to go to sleep. Some people have said that they're having trouble sleeping. And when you listen to an audiobook as you go to sleep, that's a really nice thing to do because it gives your internal monologue something to wrap its mind around, the same way that watching TV or reading a book would do, which people kind of like. High functioning people tend to like at the end of the day because their mind is going a million miles an hour. However, you get to do it with your eyes closed. So that's a really important thing, is that it allows you to have your internal monologue just focused on something relaxing in a story, but to be able to do it with your eyes closed. Also, when we think about structure and routine, we want to remember that, of course, our bodies are within our control. And when we are in quarantine, there is a sense of confinement. It's not just a sense of confinement. We're actually less able to be mobile and to get out there and use our bodies. And using our bodies is one of the ways that we burn off cortisol, our stress hormone. So here we are in quarantine, which can raise our stress, and then we are not finding ways necessarily to burn off that stress because we're having a less mobile lifestyle. So it's a really important time to make sure that you're getting your exercise. Maybe consider splurging a little bit on, a virtual personal trainer, even if it's not something you would usually do for yourself, to recognize that this is actually a really special, unique situation where you kind of want to pull out all the stops in terms of your self-care. Also, when it comes to your daily routine, to think about quiet reflection. And again, these are things that many of us might have always meant to do anyway, always wanted to have a journaling practice or a meditation practice. So these are good habits for us anyway, but they're especially important during times of stress. Many studies have shown that religiosity is a protective factor during times of stress. It doesn't even matter what religion. If a person is Jewish or, Muslim or Christian, any religion, tends to help people to process stress better. So on drclay.com/COVID, I do have some links to all kinds of online spiritual things, including meditation and journaling. All of these things are good ways to find time for quiet reflection. And if you might even just challenge yourself to spend 5 minutes every morning or every evening in quiet reflection, you might be pleasantly surprised at the effects that that can have on you over time. It's also, as I'm sure everybody knows, really important to connect with nature, but it's especially important during quarantine when we're like literally inside almost all the time. So here you'll see, for example, even if it's something as simple as getting a plant, having it by your window. For my son on Amazon.com, I recently ordered like a caterpillars to butterflies kit, and I got it for him. But I'll tell you, it's been pretty neat for me too, just to be able to see and watch these little caterpillars becoming butterflies. And so, it's like $20 on Amazon. I think a really good purchase if you go there and just punch in like caterpillars to butterfly kits. Also, you see there, I've got that Amazon Alexa device. I don't want to say her name too loud because she'll wake up. And then also that picture of the chair is actually showing a sunlight lamp, right? So for those of us that might tend to get seasonal affective issues, especially being in quarantine might start to mimic some of that stuff. So we want to make sure that we're getting our nature fix. Certainly in your work from home environment, I encourage you to give yourself every possible way to make that experience easier. So whether that means that you want to get yourself a landline telephone, since like a lot of people have said that cell phone signals are getting a little bit overused right now. A signal repeater, like if you're someone that has some kind of any Wi-Fi issues in your house, you want to just get rid of all those types of things. Also noise canceling headphones, the binaural means over 2 ears, especially for those of you that are trying to share space with other people and multiple people are trying to have conference calls at the same time. I would just encourage you to really be generous with yourself and to recognize that whatever purchases or things that you might want to get for yourself right now, especially if it's about work or your self-care, these are not luxurious indulgences. This is really you trying to set yourself up for success. Now, there is something also, we're going to talk about some stuff later that's more relevant really for families and couples, but especially for those of you who are living alone. I want to introduce a concept called skin hunger. And as the name implies, it's really about the desire and the need to be touched and held. Human beings are tribal animals, and we really need that sense of skin contact. And so even those of us that do live with other people, we're still getting less touch and less physical contact than before. So again, on drclay.com/COVID, I do have some links to some of my favorite stuff, but you can certainly Google for your own stuff. So what we have here is an electric blanket warmer on the left. And if you have your blankets and things warmed in the evening or a warm towel after you get out of the shower, it's not the same, obviously, but it's getting closer to that feeling of a warm body nearby you. And this woman here has something called a huggaroo, which is like a weighted vest that goes around you. And there's a weighted blanket as well. A lot of times autistic people actually, these products were kind of made a little bit around that industry of serving the needs of autistic people, because some autistic people don't always feel comfortable with physical contact with others, even though it is, there's something soothing and important about it. So things like weighted blankets or these huggaroos originally were being marketed to people with autism. But now, especially during the time of quarantine, many, people, I personally own every single product on the screen here, and I don't have autism. Many people are finding these types of things just really helpful to augment their wellness. Same here for these electric massage booties and things like that. It kind of on some level mimics that feeling of being squeezed or held. I know it's not the same, obviously, And it is just a temporary workaround. It is important to remember that quarantine is time limited, of course, which whenever we're dealing with any stressor, to remember that it's time limited is always important. But at the same time, again, these are products that are typically going to be useful for people even after quarantine. I owned all of these products even before quarantine. I think that they just help to, create warmth and space and coziness in your life. Also, on the subject of skin hunger, and there's special yoga for people to, that are maybe experiencing that skin hunger. I was a yoga teacher before I was a psychologist. And so what we have here are, say, if you look at this woman there on the right, who's doing a forward bend, she's actually experiencing human touch. So she's experiencing the feeling of breath upon her shoulder. She's experiencing what it feels like to breathe close to someone's skin. She's experiencing what it feels like to rest your head in someone's lap, and she's experiencing the weight of a head upon your lap. The man with the strap, he's experiencing what it feels like to feel pulled towards someone. And the woman there in repose is just feeling what it feels like to feel supported as you kind of lay back and relax and have that support, almost like somebody, cuddling up around you. And again, I know it's not the same, but our bodies on a certain level would rather have something than nothing. And so if you're finding that you're struggling with skin hunger, these are some workarounds. One more slide here on skin hunger is just to know that it's important to feel like you can talk about it. The worst thing we ever want to do is actually disconnect from a need. So sometimes if we have a need and we feel powerless to meet it, we can start to just disconnect from it and pretend like, well, I didn't care about that anyway. And that can feel tempting in the moment to act like we don't need it. But what that really does then is it causes us to disconnect from ourselves, and it leads to feelings like numbness or just a lack of engagement because we're not in touch with our needs and in touch with ourselves. So if you're feeling like you're having skin hunger or just loneliness or whatever, I really encourage you to talk about it, to, call someone, talk about it. You can blame it on me. You can blame it on this workshop that you saw, this workshop and learned about skin hunger. And we're told that you should talk about it if you think it's something that you might be struggling with, by all means. Even if you want to engage with me on social media, talk about anything that you're seeing in this, workshop. I'd love to engage with people. Obviously, my ability to engage on social media back is somewhat limited, but I do like to be able to engage as much as I can. Speaking of engagement, face-to-face contact is super important. And I know some people are having Zoom fatigue, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But nevertheless, we have these things called mirror neurons in our brain, and mirror neurons only fire when they see another human face. And as the name mirror neurons implies, the mirror neurons will mirror whatever facial expression they are seeing. And so that is the brain underpinnings of empathy. When we can see someone, we literally see what they're feeling, and then our mirror neurons actually literally take that on. So we're starting to automatically get a sense of connection with the other person, where we don't get that if we don't have face-to-face contact. So please, if you can, try to connect with people on video. Again, I know some people have said, look, I've had enough video, and that's okay. And you can certainly listen to yourself if that's the case. But another kind of workaround, if you are having Zoom fatigue, is to try sitting a little bit back, right? Because some studies have shown that when our faces are this close to the camera, it can be a little unnerving because maybe your brain feels like someone's in your face. And so you can sit a little bit further back if you want to have a little bit more of a sense of space. I just personally, because this is a workshop and I'm trying to be in your face a little bit, I've got my face right up here to the camera, but it's just one thing to think about. Also, if you are spending a lot of time on Zoom, I encourage you to think about the lighting that you have. So as you can see, I've got some professional lighting here. Really wasn't that expensive at all, like less than $100. And again, if you want to see any of the stuff that I personally got, you can go to that link at the bottom of the presentation, drclay.com/COVID. If you're going to be spending time in front of your computer on Zoom, again, I encourage you to have some kind of a light so that when you're looking at your face on Zoom all day, you're looking at a bright, lively version of your face. There's nothing more kind of depressing and fatiguing and low energy inducing than looking at like a dim, dark version, of your face all day. So I encourage you to literally and figuratively put yourself in the best possible light. Now, another thing when we think about control, the zone of control, wanting to focus on the things that we can control, is choosing to help others, but also knowing when and how to set boundaries. It can feel really good to help others. And again, on that website /COVID below, I do have some online volunteer opportunities, some links, suicide hotlines, they need volunteers. There's, online tutoring for kids that are, needing some extra help. If you have the time and the bandwidth, volunteering is a great way to get out of your own head a little bit, kind of make your universe a little bit bigger, right? Even from the quarantine of your home. Or you might be on the other side where you need to learn how to say no to people and set some boundaries. And that's okay too. Learning how to, sometimes there's an assumption that because we're in quarantine and we're home all the time, that we must always be available. And this is especially true, I've found, for people that are living alone, that there's an assumption by their friends and family or by their employers, that they're just constantly available. So if you feel like you're in that situation, I want you to know that it is totally okay for you to just take some time for yourself. If people are asking, can you do this? Can you do that? And you feel like, some people have told me who live alone, they say, well, I feel like, people with families, like their employer, other people kind of understand, like, oh, they can't do such and such because they have family needs, and I'm alone, I live alone, and so everything falls on me. I encourage you to know that you can still tell people that you have a family situation that you need to take care of, because you are in your family. So even if it's just you needing to have a quiet night with yourself, and it's not something you feel would be easily understood by the person you're talking to, you can always say, like, actually, I have some family obligations that evening, if that's just easier for people to understand for some reason. And just knowing, again, that you are part of your family.